killer dad? A Canadian man in custody for allegedly murdering his 9-year-old daughter and tossing her body in the woods. Plus, Hunter Biden's back in the fray, dishing details about his father's infamous presidential debate disaster. And remembering Malcolm-Jamal Warner, the tragic end to the man so many loved as the Cosby Show's Theo Huxtable, gone at just 54. Those stories and more today, Tuesday, July 22nd. I'm Caitlin Becker, and this is the New York Postcast. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is ripping the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, over the shooting of a border agent in Manhattan this weekend. I told you about the suspect yesterday, an illegal migrant with a mile-long rap sheet. Well, the DHS Secretary was in New York Monday and wasted no time in placing blame.
How many more lives will it take? How many more people have to be hurt and victimized before we have public safety be a number one priority in some of our largest cities? When I look at what Mayor Adams has done to New York City, it breaks my heart to see the families that have suffered because of his policies.
And in a game of political kick the can down the road, Mayor Adams passed the buck, pointing the finger at the city council for making the laws he believes made this crime possible, telling reporters, quote, "I just carry out the rules." Now, the laws he's referring to in this case are centered around the Big Apple being a sanctuary city. Meanwhile, a second suspect in the shooting was nabbed on Monday, also an illegal migrant from the Dominican Republic with prior arrests. Noem said that he'd been previously released on arrests for reckless endangerment and larceny before ICE could detain him. Now to the war between Russia and Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that representatives from both countries will hold peace talks in Turkey tomorrow, the first in 7 weeks. But that hasn't stopped Vladimir Putin's latest fatal attack, once again aimed at Kyiv. Russian forces bombarded Ukraine's capital city this week, striking the entrance to a subway station where hundreds were sheltering. For the past week, Kyiv had been granted a temporary reprieve in the aerial attacks, with Russia halting their aggression. And there's a reason for that. U.S. Special Envoy Keith Kellogg was in the country meeting with Ukrainian officials. As soon as he left, Russia picked back up with the bombings. And back here in the United States, one of President Trump's key Republican allies amped up the rhetoric against Putin. Here's Senator Lindsey Graham on Fox News.
Putin, your turn is coming. You know, Donald Trump is the Scotty Scheffler of American politics and foreign diplomacy, and he's about to put a whooping on your ass.
For those unfamiliar, Scotty Scheffler, not a politician. He's a dominant golfer who just won the British Open, so interesting choice there, but I digress. We are now 42 days away from President Trump's deadline for Vladimir Putin to agree to a deal before the U.S. would greenlight 100% tariffs against key Russian trading partners like China, India, and Brazil. And now to Hunter Biden. For once, we're not talking about his laptop. Nope, the Hunter of today is here with the Biden family tea. The younger Biden marked the first anniversary of his father bowing out of the 2024 presidential election this week by reviving the era of Sleepy Joe. Hunter claims in a new interview that the former president's disastrous debate performance last summer was the result of taking Ambien. Here he is speaking with YouTube personality Andrew Callahan.
I know exactly what happened in that debate. He flew around the world, basically, the mileage that he could have flown around the world 3 times. Yeah. He's 81 years old. He's tired as They give him Ambien to be able to sleep. He gets up on the stage, and he looks like he's a deer in the headlights.
I mean, who among us hasn't gone to work tired as Now, Biden had traveled to Europe a week and a half before the debate, but he'd been back in the U.S. and was prepping for said debate at Camp David for nearly 7 days before the big day. And for what it's worth, Ambien wasn't on the list of 6 medications that President Biden's doctor listed in a February 2024 memo after his annual physical. Now to our big story, a grisly crime near Lake George. What could possibly drive a seemingly loving parent to take the life of their own child? That's what investigators in upstate New York are trying to riddle out after a 9-year-old little girl turned up dead and her father was arrested for her alleged murder. Luciano Frattolin is accused of killing his daughter Melina this weekend, just before he was scheduled to fly back to Canada and bring the girl back to her mother, his ex-wife. Police were first alerted that there was some sort of issue with Melina because her father called them. Saturday night, this concerned dad phoned the local sheriff's department claiming his daughter was missing and possibly abducted. But Melina had reportedly sounded fine when she spoke with her mother on Saturday evening. Only an hour later, though, Luciano was on the phone with police claiming that she'd been kidnapped by someone in a white van. An Amber Alert went out, but something about this story was fishy to investigators. And Sunday, the very next day, Melina's body was found hidden under a log in a shallow pond. Police now believe that missing persons report was bogus and that Melina's own father is responsible for her murder. For more on that, I'm joined now by the Post's senior reporter, Chris Nisi. So, Chris, what do we know about Luciano Frattolin and his relationship with his daughter, Melina?
Well, most of what we know so far is based on Frattolin's own accounts on the internet. His Instagram page features a few photos of Melina, some by herself or with other relatives, some holiday pictures, a couple of father-daughter snaps, most of them from 2023. He describes himself first and foremost on his Instagram bio as a loving father and speaks glowingly of her in his corporate bio on his website for his Montreal-based coffee company, Gambella Coffee. There, he calls her beautiful and the light of his life, but also concedes that he had to kind of get used to her messy art projects and, quote, chaotic ensemble of toys because of his self-admitted rigid tendencies to keep things in perfect order. That website's been taken offline since we first reported on it.
There's something kind of cutesy about that. You know, I'm rigid. I like order. She's so messy. That's such a cute little relationship. And it just flies in the face of the accusations that he is facing. So are you hearing anything about motive? I mean, what could have driven someone to allegedly do something so heinous?
Obviously, it's really tough to speculate about that. And officials have yet to comment publicly about a possible motive. Cops said that he was estranged from his ex-wife, Melina's mother, since 2019. But that he was authorized to travel with their daughter, and their recent 10-day trip to the U.S. was part of a custody visit. We've seen some reporting in Montreal media that Frattolin was over $200,000 in debt, stemming from a number of businesses he owned, including 2 separate cafes. One of the businesses was a rental unit in the hip Montreal enclave of Mile End, which he sublet as an Airbnb. That venture he specifically started to be able to afford child support payments, as he previously said in court documents. However, that lease for that Airbnb was terminated by the landlord last August after he fell about $26,000 behind in rent payments.
That's a large amount of money there. And it's important for people to remember, as much as we want to know why, we want to know the motive, you don't need a motive in order to get a conviction. And authorities are certain that they have their killer. So where is Luciano now in the legal process?
So Frattolin is facing second-degree murder charges, which is a Class A1 felony in New York. Under New York penal law, the minimum sentence there would be 15 to 40 years in prison. But under certain circumstances, including if the victim is younger than 11, which is obviously the case here, it could carry a sentence of 25 years to life. He's also facing a much lesser felony charge of concealment of a human corpse, for which he could be sentenced to up to 4 years in prison. At his arraignment in Essex County Jail, where he's currently being held without bail, a plea of not guilty was entered on his behalf, and he's due back in court on Friday, July 25th.
And you will be following it, as will we. Chris Nisi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Some very sad news to report from our friends at Page Six. Actor Malcolm-Jamal Warner, who you will no doubt remember as the lovable Theo Huxtable on The Cosby Show, died while on vacation with his family in Costa Rica. And the circumstances are grim. Police say that he was swimming in the ocean and got caught in a high current. Now, a woman claiming to be Warner's cousin had posted online shortly before the news went public, quote, "My cousin died yesterday after drowning in Costa Rica." Several of the actor's former co-stars took to social media to express their heartbreak, remembering a talented, kind, and gracious actor with an infectious laugh. Off camera, Warner kept his family life very private. The 54-year-old is survived by a wife and daughter. And finally today, a sad but very weird way to die. Wearing a massive 20-pound chain into an MRI room. Now, if you didn't know, an MRI is a giant magnet. And if you've ever had one, you know that you can't wear anything metal. 61-year-old Keith McAllister was accompanying his wife to get imaging of her knee at an open MRI facility on Long Island in New York. A family member posting on a GoFundMe page claims that the tech in that room failed to warn McAllister that he too needed to remove any metal. He was apparently wearing a 20-pound metal chain with a padlock. Explaining what happened, she writes in part, quote, "The technician left the room to get her husband to help her off the table. He forgot to inform him to take the chain he was wearing from around his neck off when the magnet sucked him in." McAllister was reportedly stuck to the machine for nearly an hour before police were able to release the chain and free him. And his family says that he suffered several heart attacks during the ordeal, which is what ultimately led to his death. Such a sad and heartbreaking story, and now a new fear is unlocked. For more on these stories, or perhaps a palate cleanser, something more uplifting, head to the New York Post. We've got it all. So pick up the paper and visit us online. And while you're at it, like and subscribe to the New York Postcast wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'll be here waiting right here for you tomorrow in your headphones or your speakers. I'm not picky.